All right, good morning, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to hop on for another round of our winter webinar series. And just quick reminder that if you haven't been able, or if you signed up for the webinar, obviously you're here today. But if you maybe lost track of that link and you have somebody else that you want to have a part of these, just reach out to us at support@prebuiltml.com. We can send that invite out to some other people if you wanted to have them join in. So be aware of that. Also, quick reminder as well to you have your Q&A controls there in your webinar area. So find the Q&A section. Feel free to chat into that as we go over some different stuff here. Or if you just have questions maybe on some unrelated topics that you're hoping to get an answer to, feel free to reach out to that. Harry is watching that for us. We'll be answering some of those questions as we go through. So and with that, we're gonna go ahead and hop in here to our topic for the day. Today we're gonna be looking at the Quick Check feature. And this is one that, there's all sorts of features throughout the pre-built ML software, but this is one that I would arguably say that pretty much everybody really should be using at least to some level. So highly encourage you to leverage this feature at least in some way. It's got to be relevant to you in some form or fashion. Really, what it boils down to is the reality that all of us are human. We make mistakes at times, and we found this just as our own internal estimating team that there's just those opportunities for mistakes that just come up, whether it's because we got distracted, we went off to lunch and came back, forgot where we were, whatever the case may be. There's just always those potentials that we overlooked something. And so that's why we have this quick check feature here in the software, and highly encourage you to use it. So there's a couple of different dimensions to this. So I have here on the project tab over here in the quick checked area. Looking first here on the left-hand side at the general information section. So the idea is after you have finished up a project, you can come visit this tab, take a quick look. And so I'm going to start over here on the general information side and refresh that. And this is just going to give me a quick high-level view of my project. So, hey, it's like what's going on with it. Easy to kind of just breeze through and see and note if, hey, is there anything that stands out to me as something maybe being off or something that maybe I've overlooked? So perhaps, so for as an example, I'm looking through this and I'm saying, hey, got my stud quantities, and it feels like, well, wait a second, it's I have interior studs, exterior studs, and where's the garage? How come I don't have any garage studs? And so that might be a flag for me of like, hey, I know I had a garage in this project. Where did that go? Or I might be maybe might be looking at my gable sheathing and say, well, gable sheathing, that's weird. Why do I have two versions of gable sheathing? I would only expect to have one on this project. Or looking at my roof decking. Another one would be like my zero pitch that I have right here. Now, there might be a case where a zero pitch makes sense, where we would, want to have that, but probably for a lot of us, in most cases, that would just be wrong. We forgot to pitch that or assign the correct pitch. Or if maybe you were seeing some pitches in here that just didn't make sense, like if there was a 12-12 pitch and it's like, well, I don't really have that anywhere in this project. So again, just providing that visibility. Another one that can be handy, and this is maybe a little bit less about uh, um, the specific, finding a problem per se, but here's another interesting summary here for siding. So all the siding products that are entered in here, it gives you a total square footage of, how much square footage is there. So if you're needing to call something like a house wrap, and it makes sense to follow for, in your case, what's the square footage of siding is, rather than needing to go around and gather all those, especially if you have different types of siding, you can just come straight here, find that square footage, and key that into your list that way. Or another approach might be that might work better for you in your case is we have like your wall sheathing type. So here's my wall sheathing. I have, a little over 2,000 square feet there. Got my gable sheathing. So combine those two together, and maybe in your case or the type of work that you do, that makes sense to leverage that for a house wrap or some other vapor barrier covering that way. So lots of stuff that you can see over here on this side in the general information tab, especially if you kind of get familiar with what you want to see. Now you actually can customize this section as well. So if there's some things in here that are displaying that it's like, well, I just don't care. I don't necessarily want to see that, and it's just is sort of noise that I don't need to look at. You can certainly check and uncheck boxes here. So that way you just need to look at the stuff that would be relevant to you. So leverage this. This is a little bit more of you kind of have to know what you're looking for in a sense, but it just kind of gathers everything together in a nice little small package for you to be able to make that quick review of the project. Jumping across on the other side, maybe the more interesting section is this potential errors section. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the refresh button here. And there's a few different types of errors that you might encounter. I'm going to skip past these first two sections, come down here to the bottom first, and that's this plan area. Now, I have my settings turned on that basically say, hey, if I've drawn something and assigned an application and a product to it, but I didn't link it, it's going to warn me about that. So like here in this case, so I was wondering, hey, where did my garage studs go? Why don't I have any garage walls? Well, it turns out I actually have drawn my garage walls. They're all there. They're on the main floor plan even right here, and they're just not linked. So that would be a catch for me on my side. Now, when it comes to the plan tab warnings, you have these handy little buttons here, the zoom to feature that's kind of built right in here into the quick check. So I can click on that, and if I go over to the plan, I'm already pulled straight into that area right there. So, it's already zoomed to it, it's selected the item. I can just come here and say, hey, put this into my house main wall pack. And now I've done that, come back here, and if I refresh, I've taken care of that. If I refresh this, I can see I got my garage studs now. So, lots of easy ways to interact and see what's going on. So leverage that zoom to functionality as well as finding links that you may draw, things that you may have drawn that you failed to link. Skipping back up here above, a few different types of errors that the quick check feature can help you find. One is, did you just flat out forget to call something? So in this case, like you can see in my list here, I have, I headers, I didn't call headers anywhere in my list at all. Or house wrap. I didn't call house wrap anywhere in this particular list. So, am I okay with that? Is that fine? Now, when it comes to this potential error section, we understand there's maybe going to be some things that you would want to be warned about, but it's like, well, okay, but it doesn't apply to this project. So that's where you can easily dismiss an error and say, well, in this case, it doesn't matter. So maybe in this case, I didn't need to call the house wrap on this project, so I can come here and I can click on this, and it will just sort of that gray out. So now it's no longer in play. It's not going to warn me about that anymore. It's just going to let that go on through. Now, I can show you what that means here in a moment, but that's the concept that you can leverage there. So first type of error, did you just flat out miss something and just fail to call it altogether? Second thing, idea would be, did you call something and then there was something else that really should have gone with that? So, for example, right here, I've called mudsill, but I don't have any bearing plates. Those anchor plates, those 2.5 or 3 inch plate styles that to hold the mudsill down to the foundation. So I didn't call those anywhere. So this is again just a warning of like, hey, you called this one thing, probably would have expected you to call this other thing. Did you not do that? So you can have it check for that sort of thing. In a similar vein, but a little bit different, is a great example here of, there's a missing match depth product. This actually comes out of just, again, some of our own experience as far as things that we have run into in the past when it comes to calling stuff. So here we've called these floor joists. So this 9.25 inch depth floor joist, some 2x10s. And it's saying, hey, there's no rim material that's matching that same depth. And I might scratch my head and say, huh, that's weird. So I can come over to the material list, come over to my upper floor pack here, I think it is. And so it turns out I've got my floor joist, my 2x10s, and my rim is a 2x12. So maybe the floor was a 2x12 set earlier. I changed everything to 2x10, forgot to go back and actually change it. Or maybe I just miscalled it even from the beginning. So change that over to 2x10, what it should be, come back here to the quick check and refresh that, and that error goes away. So that's just another example of something that you can have the quick check for you is, it's like associated depths and things that, just that would help catch those problems. Now I'm going to just step on to just to show you maybe one other type of rule, but really just also show you some how you can control these a little bit more. So I kind of led off the beginning of this conversation of saying like, really everybody should be using this. And let me clarify more specifically, why I would say that. Let's come into this settings tab right here for this. Now, you have a lot of control over what you'd be warned about. So really at the end of the day, even if you turned all these rules off and all you were just having to do was warn you that, hey, there's an output failure. It's like you thought you were calling something, but for whatever reason, maybe you didn't build your custom product right, or whatever, it's not calling it out. Or the plan area, like you drew something but you didn't link it. So there's some basic stuff in here that really almost doesn't really depend what type of work you're doing. It can help catch just the flat out obvious stuff. So even if you turn most of these off and just one or two of these is turned on for that one item that it's like, well, if I did make that mistake, I would certainly want to know about it, then certainly do that. Another example of what you can have it do, let's say that you have there's product that you maybe tend to call, you draw it out in your project because it's helpful, but you would never actually specify it in your material list. So like for some of us, that might be steel, for example. So maybe let's see here if I have this in here somewhere. Yes, steel product check right here. I'm going to turn this guy on. Click done. So I've now activated that rule, and that would be how you could activate any of the other rules yourself. But here I've created this product from the steel categories in the output. So if maybe I tend to draw some steel beams because it makes it easier to get my floor joist accurate, but then I don't want it linked into my list because I don't really want to send it that way. Maybe I made the mistake of accidentally putting that steel product into the material list, and I would want to be warned of like say, hey, if I accidentally got it into my material list and it was not just left unlinked, then I would want to make sure I catch that before it goes out the door. So that would be something how you could leverage that. You could also pick some products from a different category to make sure that you're not calling something that you shouldn't be calling. So yeah, but then further on, as far as coming to how you can customize this further, you can do rule creation over here. So I'm going to come up here to my rule creator up at the top, and it's going to bring you into this little bit like this little sort of wizard, so to speak, of, step you through of like how can you create a rule. There's a few different areas that you can create a rule for. One is at the sort of the project as a whole level. So it's basically, it fits more into that bucket of like, hey, did you call something anywhere in this entire project? It might be in multiple different packs or places where it might tend to show up, but if it's like, in general, did you call it? Similar with a list, if you wanted to evaluate at each individual list level. So these are kind of interesting for a few specific cases, maybe not as interesting as the one that's the pack. This is probably where, at the pack levels, where most of the interesting rules that you might want to create and call are. So we'll go there and click next. And then you have these different types of rules that you can create and then customize. One that isn't necessarily in here by default as far as for one that's in the rule list that you may want to create. This kind of pretty cool, I think. And that is that material does not exceed the maximum stocking length. So I'm going to pick that. So basically, what the rule here is that if you have stocking lengths set up for your particular materials, steel or engineered wood or lumber, if you're drawing stuff, as we all know, you can actually draw something in the software that it's like is 100 feet long, right? 100 foot glulam beam. It's like, well, you can't call that. It needs to be broken up into different pieces, or a 69-foot floor joist. And so it forgot to get broken, forgot to split it where it needed to be split. So this type of rule would catch that. If you actually went to output the report and said, hey, you've got a 69-foot glulam, you sure you want that? Based on not just some random amount, but actually what your stocking lengths are set up for in your stocking length tab. So I'll pick the rule I want, click next. And for some of the other rules types, there might be a few other settings that you might need to make here, or basically customizing it to what you want it to be. In this case, it's pretty straightforward because we're just saying, hey, I want to make sure that I'm not having material past my stocking lengths. The last thing that's interesting here is to be able to set the severity. I'm going to leave this at the error level to start with, and then we'll come back to you and show you a couple of the other options that are here. Now, I could set it, and I'll point these out, info and warning. This is just to give you yourself a feel of like, how important is this that I should pay attention to it. The two most important, probably the interesting ones are the error and the violation, but I'll come back to that and show you that in a moment. So I'm going to click on this and create rule. And that should have been added in here, right here. Products don't exceed the maximum stocking length. So I'll click done. Now in this case, it's actually pulling up some that I'm exceeding my maximum stocking length in this case. So that's what's going on with those. Now, rule type, or one of the other reasons that one of the other ways that you can use the software or use the quick check feature, which again I highly encourage if you're going to be leveraging to do this. And it's probably already set this way in your settings by default, but if you've turned it off, I'd encourage you to turn it back on. So I'm going to come here to settings, and down here at the bottom where mine is currently off, run quick check rules before opening framing layouts and reports. So I'm going to click check and click done. So what that's going to do is when I hit Control P now to view a report, or if I went to the reports tab and viewed it or anything else, instead of going straight into the report, if I have issues showing up in my quick check area, it's actually going to stop first and say, hey, you got this stuff going on. Are you sure you want to continue? So it's trying to, help keep that right in front of you instead of you having to remember to go and do the quick check tab. It's just bringing it right there in front of you for you to see. Now you can go ahead and continue with errors if you like. Maybe you're only partway through your project, so it's like, yeah, I'll come back to that later. You can continue with errors and you can get to the material report as you might expect. And then, hopefully then you're not just ignoring that all the time, and bypassing it, which is why I would say definitely customize these rules so that you're only being warned about the stuff you actually care about. That way you're just dealing with the stuff that's important. But how can you also leverage this further? And maybe this is, maybe this isn't so much for you who is listening to this webinar, but maybe you have a new person or a new guy to the industry. And it's like, okay, there's some things that if they made this mistake, I wouldn't even want them to be able to create a report. So let's just say, let's go to our no headers called anywhere in the list. Maybe your type of work, it's like there should be headers every single time. And if somebody missed that, that's a problem. So let's come here to our settings and let's go to our missed applications on headers. And we're going to change this severity level here from this to violation. Okay. When you take it to this level, and just for simplicity, I'm going to turn off the steel product. Okay, click done. Okay, so now we have this uh, item for missed application. Oh, I turned off the wrong one. That's why. Let's clean up this other one. Check the wrong one. There we go. This is the one I really wanted to turn off. There we go. Now that cleans up the list a little bit more. Okay, so we've got this list, and we missed the headers in this particular list. Now, if we go to hit Control P, it's going to tell us, hey, you've got this issue, but notice now what's missing is since I have a violation level error going on here, you'll notice that I can't just say continue with errors. We actually won't let you proceed to the report or to the output with that violation in place. You actually have to go and deal with that. So that's the concept or the idea behind the violation level is that if you have created that you actually need to deal with that in some way. So that kind of rounds it out there with the quick overview of Quick Check. We'll be hanging on here yet for a few minutes. So if you have some questions in the chat that you want to throw into there, feel free to do that. Otherwise, thanks very much for joining us again today, and we hope that you have a good rest of your afternoon.